Let's cultivate our motivation. And make sure that when we're listening to the teachings, that we're doing it with a thought that is wishing for liberation or for full awakening. And that we're not just listening to the teachings in order to make this life better, although certainly that's a byproduct of it, of listening to the teachings. But let's really stretch our mind to have a long-term motivation. Because the quality of our motivation will determine how the karma ripens. So really think of your spiritual path in a very large way, spanning many lifetimes. And in this way aspire for the highest awakening. Okay, so this thing about the motivation is really very important. Because depending on what we motivate as, that will be how the karma ripens. So people could be doing the same action, but with different motivations, and as a result have different karmic ripenings. So somebody could be sitting here thinking, I want to listen to the teachings because it'll help me, have better relationships with people, which is fine, it's fine motivation. It's something virtuous. But it's also limited because it will ripen in your having better relationships as you apply the Dharma. Yeah, somebody else might be listening to the same teachings, thinking, through listening to these teachings, may I have a better rebirth, a good rebirth. And, therefore, by listening to the teachings, they will process the teachings differently if they have the motivation for a good rebirth than if they have the motivation to improve their relationships this lifetime. Won't they? Yeah? I mean, look in your own mind. If you're thinking, okay, I'm going to listen to this because it'll improve my relationships, then the way you focus on the teachings is in a way that improves your relationships. If you think, I'm going to listen to the teachings, in order to have a better rebirth, then the way you focus on the teachings is different, because you will start to see how those teachings will lead you to a better rebirth, how they'll prevent you from creating negative karma, how they'll help you purify, and so the way you're processing the teachings, is different because of your motivation, and the result you get will also be different. It'll result in having a good rebirth. Somebody else, a third person, may listen and think, by listening to these teachings, may I be liberated from samsara and all the dukkha of samsara. Also a good motivation. And because that motivation's prime in their mind, they will listen to the teachings and understand them in a different way. Yeah, because they'll be thinking, oh, now how is this teaching going to help me overcome all of my afflictions and help me eliminate ignorance and thereby attain liberation. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? So they'll be thinking about the teachings differently. And as a result, those teachings will ripen in their being liberated. If somebody's listening to the teachings with the bodhicitta motivation and thinking through listening, may I, attain full awakening, then when they're listening to the exact same teachings, they're going to be thinking, well, how can this teaching help me overcome my self-centered thought? How can it help me open my heart to really treasure all sentient beings equally? How can this teaching help me realize emptiness? And as a result, that same action will result in their attaining full awakening. Yeah. So this is why we want to generate the bodhicitta motivation as much as we possibly can, for each action we do, starting out in the morning, thinking everything I do today, may it be done with bodhicitta, but then throughout the day really, renewing that motivation, because it will change how we relate to the events of the day. Yeah. And you can begin to see that if you have that bodhicitta motivation. Maybe you go into work and then there's some problem and people are unhappy about this and that and the other thing, and somebody's being really bossy and domineering, and you can apply the same teachings, let's say meditating on patience, and think, okay, I'm going to use this to calm my mind right now, and then I'll feel better and I'll be able to endure this situation. So you apply the teachings on fortitude, and you calm your mind down, you don't get so angry, and that's helpful, that's good. Yeah. But if you think, oh, I want to practice Dharma right now, because if I don't, my anger is going to cause me to have a lower rebirth. So I really want to, calm my mind and stop this anger, because I don't want to have a lower rebirth and I want to have a good rebirth. Yeah. Then there's going to be a different kind of way you work with the situation. Isn't there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you really have that thought of I want a good rebirth, that I think is going to be a much stronger motivation to correct our mind than just I don't want to feel bad at the end of the day. Okay, and then if the same situation in your workplace is going on, and you're thinking, I really want to subdue my anger and here because I want to attain liberation, then you're thinking, this anger is really preventing my liberation. And is it worthwhile for me getting angry at this situation that's happening right now and sacrificing my liberation for the joy of getting angry? I'm not going to go there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that really helps to cut the anger much quicker. And then if you have, the fourth motivation, and you're thinking, this anger is going to destroy the merit that I've accumulated for eons, and is going to set me back on the path to full awakening for a long time, which means that my ability to help others is going to be really slowed down, and that means that other sentient beings are going to be in difficult situations longer. Yeah, and you see the ramifications of your anger in that way, then there's even stronger motivation to stop the anger, isn't there? Yeah, because my anger is not just going to affect the people in this situation right now, but it's going to affect all the people I could possibly benefit, because I'm going to be destroying my merit, slowing down my enlightenment, creating more obstacles to benefiting others. Okay? So that's why, if we really take the time to generate our motivation at the beginning, it really affects how we deal with the situation. Whether it's an unpleasant thing happening at your workplace, or whether it's, how you listen to the teachings. Okay? So this is why we really emphasize cultivating a good motivation again and again, and coming back to our motivation again and again. Because it really makes a big difference. Okay? So in the same way, yesterday we were talking about, we did the verse that started, first is the dukkha of pain. Okay? Where he's, helping us to relinquish clinging to the three realms. And so to do that, we have to see the disadvantages of the three realms. And the first disadvantage is that we're never, totally secure in being, free from very gross pain. So it could be physical pain, such as we talked about in the three lower realms, the three unfortunate rebirths, or it could be mental pain. Yeah. And I think a lot of times we, at least in this country, suffer more from mental pain than physical pain. What do you think? How many of you suffer more from physical pain? How many from mental pain? Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Yeah. So when you think of the three unfortunate realms, we usually describe them in terms of physical pain, which would be really unbearable. But you can also describe them in terms of mental pain. So the hell realm would be a mind, that is continually feeling defensive, angry, aggressive, suspicious, on alert. So it's like, it's just, there's no relaxation in that mind state, is there? Yeah, because the mind is always suspicious. What's going on around me? Who's going to do what? Who's trying to hurt me? What are they going to do? How am I going to defend myself? That mind's very aggressive. The slightest small thing, anger comes up, resentment comes up. We get enraged. We want revenge. Yeah, that's not a pleasant mental state, is it? And then the mind always feeling other people are picking on me, nobody's treating me fairly, I'm not respected, I'm not appreciated, I'm looked down upon, I have no social standing, so a lot of resentment, a lot of jealousy. That's a very painful mental state too, isn't it? So that's kind of like the mental state in the hell realms. So, sometimes thinking about that kind of mental pain as a hell realm can be very helpful. And also you can see when we allow ourselves to have that kind of mental state in the human body, we're creating the cause to have rebirth in the hell realms, because our mind is thinking like a hell realm being. Full of anger, vengeance, belligerence, rebelliousness, won't cooperate with anybody, always have to protect ourselves, always have to get our way, always have to win in every single argument, every single thing I have to win. and I am going to push this no matter what until I win. And we do that. Yeah? So it's, that mental state is like being in the hell realm. And if you have it when you're a human being, the actions you do are going to be creating the cause for a hellish rebirth. Because with that kind of mind, what are we going to do? We're going to go beat people up. We're going to murder them. We're going to steal their stuff. We're going to, create disharmony in their relationships. We're going to yell and scream and humiliate them. Yeah? So we're going to engage in the very actions that ripen in a hellish rebirth. And we'll rejoice at doing all of those actions. That's like almost the worst part of it. Yeah? You act poorly, and at the end you feel really happy about it. And I've just been thinking so much, that one guy from ISIS who speaks English, and the one who's now beheaded 3 people on a video. And I think, what's his mental state like? Yeah? What's going on in his mind that he can do that and go to sleep at night? And he feels so happy about what he's doing. Yeah? And yet, murdering people is awful. Murdering them in a very painful way is worse. Murdering them after humiliating them and torturing them is even worse. And this guy, supported by all of his friends, feels happy about this. And I think, what kind of karma is he creating? And you can see so clearly how ignorance plays a role. He has attachment to his side, anger at the enemy, and this profound ignorance that thinks that murder is virtue and will bring him an upper rebirth. Yeah. Incredible, isn't it? Really incredible, and like, whoa. And then I think, when has my mind been like that in a previous life? Because I can't look at him and put him as other out there when I've lived in cyclic existence from beginningless time and been everything, done everything. So that means at some time in the past, my mind has thought like that, and I've done those kinds of actions. Yeah. And if that karma is still on my mind stream, that is not good news. So I better do some purification. And I also need to have some compassion for this person, because what he's doing is so profoundly ignorant and so profoundly damaging that kind of action is only worthwhile of compassion. How can you hate somebody who is so ignorant and so full of attachment and anger? Yeah. So then you use that situation to, you use it to generate bodhicitta. And, I've got to become a Buddha to help this person. Yeah. And I've got to purify my own negative karma, because in case I have the seeds of doing similar things on my mind stream, so that I don't experience that result. Okay? So if you think like this, then watching the news becomes Dharma practice. Okay? And it becomes a very strong motivator. Okay. Or an example of, hungry ghost mentality. Because what the hungry ghosts suffer from is perpetual dissatisfaction. Nothing satisfies them. They're hungry, they're thirsty, and this is taken on a literal level, but I'll also explain the symbolic level. You're suffering from hunger and thirst. You run towards something that looks so beautiful, this pile of delicious food, but when you get there, it's pus and blood. And you can't eat it, it's disgusting. And then you see somewhere else some other beautiful food, and you run there, and it's not pus and blood, so you take a little bit, but it completely burns. You're all the way down, completely burns, and you experience tremendous pain. And then you run somewhere else, and there's food. And you want to have, because you're so hungry, you take a big thing and put it in your mouth. But the hungry ghosts have big mouths and very thin necks, so they can't satisfy their hunger because they can't swallow it. Yeah. Now you think, okay, what's a mental state like that corresponds to that kind of rebirth? That would be the mental equivalent of that suffering, and that would also create the cause to be born in that kind of realm. It would be having a mind so full of attachment and craving and dissatisfaction that we're always running here and there, here and there. I want more, I want better. Whatever I have is not good enough. I need more, I need better. Give it to me, I've got to have it. I want. And so you can see people having this mind in terms of possessions. They're always going out and buying something because there's a hole inside, like the hungry ghost's empty stomach. So they fill it by buying themselves stuff. Or there's a hole inside, we feel lonely, we feel empty inside. We fill it by taking refuge in the refrigerator. And we eat too much. Or we eat unhealthy food. Sometimes we're so longing for love, that we go from one relationship to the next relationship to the next to the next. And you see people like that, cannot stay in one relationship. They're always going to the next one. Because there's always something better, always something more. They need more love. Elizabeth Taylor was married, 8 times or something? I suppose there's other people who have been married even more. Always looking, or one sexual partner to the next, always thinking that there's going to be better sex and that this sex, means I'm loved. Which it doesn't. Okay? So, or one, a workaholic. Gotta get more money, more prestige. Whatever I do isn't good enough. I have to work more. I have to work overtime. I have to be the most acknowledged person, because only then am I going to be worthwhile and successful. So we become workaholics, trying to prove to ourselves that we're worthwhile human beings. And so there's a lot of greed there, isn't there? A lot of attachment. So again, when we're feeding our attachment and our craving, we do a lot of harmful actions. We run right over other people. What they want, what they feel doesn't matter, because our getting what we want is the most important thing. So we use people, we run over them, we cheat, we lie, because we always have to come out on top. And it's a painful state of mind, isn't it? Perpetual dissatisfaction. Yeah? So we've all experienced dissatisfaction. And then when you think of having it all the time, oh, yeah, what a horrible mental state. And then to see when we have it as human beings, that is going to make us create the cause for a hungry ghost rebirth. Okay? Or like animals. Yeah, we have the English expression, ignorance is bliss. Is that true? Yeah, is that true that ignorance is bliss? Not the kind of ignorance we're talking about here. Yeah, the kind of ignorance Buddhism is talking about is not blissful. It is extremely dangerous, because under the influence of it, we create so many other negative karmas. You know, but then when we think of very gross ignorance, yeah, that's the mind that just wants to zone out. Yeah, I don't want to think. This is all too much. I don't want to think. So, let's self-medicate. Yeah. So whatever our self-medication of choice is. Yeah, alcohol, pills, grass, shopping, gambling, food, sex, internet, news, movies, sci-fi novels. Yeah, romance novels, movies. Yeah. So we just go to our whatever it is that we're addicted to, you know, even if it's socially acceptable, so that we can zone out. And then we wind up, you know, with a very ignorant mind, because, yeah, we're making ourselves ignorant. Okay, and then that, you can see, you know, that mental state kind of, you know, we oversleep. That's another one. We sleep too much. Yeah. And then, you know, it creates cause for animal rebirth, where we're very ignorant, can't think straight. Okay? So it can be helpful, you know, with all these realms, to think of them in terms of physical suffering, also in terms of the mental suffering. Also, another way is, you know, how my mind creates the cause for these realms, depending upon what I'm thinking and feeling and how I'm acting right now. Okay? And so that wakes us up and helps us want to purify and create virtue, so that we'll have a good rebirth. Yeah, it makes us want to get off the wheel of cyclic existence, knowing that as long as we're in cyclic existence, we're always going to be prey to those kind of rebirths. And it can help us generate compassion and bodhicitta, wanting all others to be free of those mental states and the actions that create the cause for them to become physical states. Yeah? And so wanting to become fully awakened for that purpose. Okay? So, you know, in all these meditations, there's so many different ways you can relate to the meditation to help it help you cultivate different qualities in your mind. And so this is why we do the Lam Rim meditations many, 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 many times. It's not just a question of I've heard Lam Rim, I know that topic. Because it's not a matter of knowing it up here. It's a matter of really meditating on it and feeling it and being able to look at it from so many different perspectives so that it brings in all the different motivations of the practitioners with different capacities. Okay? So that's why we do these Lamrim meditations repeatedly. Yeah, because every time you do, if your mind's awake, you see something new in it. You can experience something new in it. Okay? And then, the more familiar you become with these meditations, then during the day, when you walk around, different things will remind you of, what you were meditating on. Yeah, and so, for example, then, because we have a lot of insects here. We live in a rural place. The whole way you relate to insects will change. Yeah, because, when you bring that way of meditating with you, you relate to all the insects completely differently. Yeah, you relate to all the animals around here differently. Okay, you relate even to the people around here differently. Okay. Okay, so any questions or comments so far? Yeah. Yeah.
But could you please clarify the different experience from the Buddhist perspective?
Okay, so we talked about the ISIS terrorists. What about the people who have been beheaded, the victims' experience? So when we experience suffering, and when we experience happiness also, it's a result of our own actions created in the past. That doesn't mean when we experience pain, that pain is a punishment, and it doesn't mean that happiness is a reward. Because just the idea, punishment and reward, assumes that there is a manager in the universe, some kind of divine being who is assessing everybody's actions and punishing some and rewarding others. But in Buddhism, there's no such idea. Yeah? First, the ripening of karma is not a punishment, it's not a reward, and there's nobody dishing out, determining who is getting happiness and who's getting suffering. But rather our experiences, the ripening of these karmas, are simply, the cause is created, the result comes about. And there's a concordance between the cause and the result. So on a physical level, we can see that. When you plant string beans grow. Yeah, sunflowers don't grow from string bean seeds. Okay? And string beans don't grow from sunflower seeds. Yeah. So there's a concordance between what the cause is and what the result is. Yeah. So when we have a result of happiness, it's the ripening of some good karma we created. From abandoning the 10 non-virtues, from doing their opposites, from practicing the 6 paramitas, the 6 far-reaching practices. Yeah, then we experience happiness. When we experience suffering, it's the result of our own negative actions. Yeah, probably done in a previous lifetime. Yeah. So when somebody experiences something like, the victim of that ISIS executioner, it's because of that person's own actions in a previous lifetime. Yeah, that doesn't mean that he deserves to suffer. Okay, and this is very important. It never means that somebody deserves to suffer. So we should never gloat over somebody's suffering and say, well, they deserved it and they got it. Yeah, because that's an awful attitude to have towards sentient beings, to rejoice at others' suffering. But to see, okay, that person is experiencing that suffering through very negative actions they've done in a previous life. Yeah, for example, killing. Yeah, and then, yeah, really thinking about that. Now, because so often in our society, we don't see killing as wrong. You know, in fact, the president just decorated one Vietnam vet and gave him some medal or another, I can't remember which, but said he killed like 185 of the enemy. And like, wow, look at this guy, he killed so many of the enemy and we're going to give him an award for his valor. You know, so killing like that and then rejoicing at somebody's killing or ordering somebody to kill, all of those are ways that we create that kind of negative karma. And when we don't have an idea about, you know, what are the causes of happiness and what are the causes of suffering, then we can very easily rejoice when people do negativity. Yeah? Like when we've been maybe had in a conflict with somebody. You know, we really don't like that person. They've been causing us so much problem and doing so many nasty things. We're just fed up with them. Yeah? And then when they get in some trouble or have some kind of adversity happen to them, inside we go, he got what he was, he got what he was deserved. He got it. Oh, that's good. I'm so glad he's suffering. Yeah? So we rejoice at somebody else's suffering, or we set them up for suffering, or whatever. So this creates those kind of causes. Because remember, we'll go into this Friday night, on the Friday night's teachings, how, what are the kinds of results we get from each kind of non-virtuous path of action. Okay? And then it makes us look at our lives, and what have I done in my life? Yeah? How many times have I killed? Well, we all go, first of all, I've never killed a human being. Yeah. But I remember as a little girl, we had lots of snails in our yard. And my parents didn't like the snails because they would eat the plants and destroy the plants. So I thought killing snails was really good. So I would go through the garden, I would pick up all the snails, put them in a pile, and then step on them and crush them. Because I thought, I'm doing something really good to help my parents. They didn't tell me to do this. I just did it on my own. And I look back now and I go, wow, so many beings that I caused a lot of suffering from in total ignorance. Yeah, and rejoicing after I did it. So, okay, I need to do some purification here because I have a lot of regret. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to experience the result of doing it. Okay? So that's the kind of action that, if I didn't know about the Dharma, I would never even think about it being something harmful. And I would never even think about talking about it to other people. Because I just think, oh, that was some inconsequential thing I did as a kid. And I helped my parents destroy all those snails. Yeah, it's only because of learning the Dharma and then looking at my life going, I better do something. Because remember, the second quality of the four general qualities of karma, the second one is a small action can bring a big result. So even though it's just a snail, by that festering in the mind stream, it being many snails, planning it out very carefully, rejoicing after it, making sure every snail got killed. I mean, it's disgusting to me to think about it now. Yeah. Okay? So that's how these kinds of results come about when we experience suffering. Okay? Any other? That was a long answer to your question. Yeah.
I've got a nephew who is Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think, when he acts out of anger, for that matter, anybody that has impaired cognitive function, when they act out of anger or other mental afflictions, are they still accruing bad karma?
Yeah, they're still accruing karma. It's probably not going to be as strong because the motivation won't be as fully developed. But it's negative karma nonetheless. Yeah. Okay. Should we go on to the next verse? Okay. So in all these things, what we're talking, use them to generate compassion, but apply them to yourself too, to generate your own wish for happiness and wish to purify and so on. Okay? Because actually the more you think of pain in terms of ourself, the easier it's going to be when we think of pain in terms of others. When we only think of others' pain, but we never think of ourselves experiencing that kind of pain, that's a very nice way that our mind has of denying the reality of the situation, isn't it? Oh, this poor person in the hospital dying of cancer. I'm so worried, I'm so concerned, this is terrible. Yeah. But what about me? Do I have that potential? Did I create the actions that would cause that? Or in some way is my compassion keeping me from applying this to myself? Yeah, it's uncomfortable when it's personal, isn't it? But when it's personal and we really feel that discomfort and pain, then when we think about others experiencing the same thing, our compassion is actually much deeper. Yeah, because we know exactly what it's like. Yeah, if we just go to others' pain, our compassion is a little bit out there, But when we can imagine experiencing the same thing or have experienced the same thing, it often deepens the strength of the compassion. Okay? Actually, this is one of the reasons why they say that people in the desire realm, God realm, and people, in the form and formless realms, why they have great difficulty practicing Dharma, because they have too much pleasure. Yeah? And they can't think of, they have no pain. They can't think of experiencing pain. So there's no motivation to practice the Dharma. Yeah. There are certain devas that can practice, but they're not the ones with the super, sense pleasure deluxe kind of happiness. Okay, so the next verses that we're going on to, starts with reflect on the dukkha of change. So the dukkha of change is this unsatisfactory condition of change, of things changing, okay? So he gives some very gross examples here, and then we'll get to more subtle examples as we go on. Okay, so from higher realms you can fall to lower realms. So somebody reborn as a human can be reborn as a cockroach, Somebody reborn in one of these states of deep concentration because they're not liberated can be reborn as a hungry ghost. Okay, so from higher realms you can fall into lower realms. Yeah, the god Indra, so he's one of these gods in the form realm, can be reborn as a mere earthling. So going from being a very powerful god who, millions of people worship and praise and emulate, to being, Joe Blow on the earth who nobody even knows about or thinks about. That's a pretty big shock to the system. Yeah. That's kind of, if we were to make an analogy, to our experience, that would be like somebody who's very rich and powerful and famous, just losing everything and becoming totally anonymous and, living in a very poor area, and nobody even knows about them after they've had all that power and fame and so on. How much suffering it is when you have something to lose it. Yeah. The sun and moon can turn into darkness, so this is another illustration of change in our physical world. Although they sometimes say that there's living beings inside the sun and moon. Okay. A universal monarch could be born as a servant. So a universal monarch is, a monarch who rules the universe, who has all these, we can't see them with our eyes, but who, again, has, all sorts of incredible worldly power and riches and fame and esteem. And that person can be reborn as a servant. Okay, so these can be known as by means of scripture, but cannot be perceived by ordinary beings. So, it talks about these kinds of things in the scriptures, but us ordinary beings can't see them happening because we can't see the beings in the other realms. Okay? So, therefore, observe your own experience of human level change. Okay, so a rich person turns into a poor one. Okay, so Bill Gates, with all that wealth, all that power, all that fame, loses everything and, is now living on the streets. Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, I remember some years ago when there was, when the recession started, there was somebody in Germany who was in Volkswagen, who had so much wealth. He killed himself, because of the recession. And I think many other people did in this country as well, or just got horribly depressed and frightened. They had so much wealth and all of a sudden, Okay, whereas when you don't have anything, you don't fear losing it. But when you have a lot, there's a lot of fear when the stock market goes down. Or think like in 1928, Yeah, it was 29. Yeah. What happened? All these people who were so wealthy, yeah, or even people who were middle class, and like boom, yeah, gone. Okay, a confident person changes into an anxious one. So you could have somebody who's very confident, very self-assured, and then they have an experience that really knocks the steam out of them, and they lose their self-confidence and become very anxious, very insecure. Possible, isn't it? Yeah, may have even happened to us at some time in our life. Many people unite together as one, and people who are united together as one split into different factions. Yeah, the Middle East right now is a really good example of that. Yeah, and if you think back over the history of the Middle East, the changing alliances, which groups of people support which groups, which are against which groups. Okay, you even see it in American politics. Yeah, I mean, in the 40s, the American enemies were Japan and Germany, who are our closest friends now. Japan and Germany. Yeah, Russia was our ally in the Second World War. We aren't getting along very well with Russia now. Okay. It's quite interesting when you see political things shift like that, and they can shift very, very quickly. Now, people even talking about, well, maybe we should be more friendly to Iran because then together we can be against ISIS. Yeah.
It happens, yeah.
Yeah. So, just all these things shifting all the time. We look at our own personal relationships. Yeah. Are there people that you were very close and loving with at one point in your life who you don't even know now? Or who maybe you don't even like now? Are there people who you didn't like before who have become very good friends now? Things change all the time. But it's strange, whenever we have a relationship, we think this is lasting forever exactly the way it is. But that's impossible, isn't it? Yeah? And we just look around us. Things are constant change. Yeah. Everybody, when they get married, they think it's going to last forever. And look at the divorce rate. How come we think it's going to last forever? Yeah. But then you put as part of your marriage thing, what do they call it? Prenuptial contracts? And so if we get divorced in the future, I still have this and you still have that. But then, what kind of trust do you have with each other if you get married with that kind of agreement? That's not going to start the marriage off so well. But on the other hand, if you don't have it, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Okay. So the list of such phenomena is inconceivable. Yeah. And it is. We just look in our own lives and how relationships have changed, how places have changed. The area around Bodh Gaya at the Buddha's time was very lush. Yeah, incredible river flowing through there, very lush, green, vibrant. Now it's in the desert. We think about climate change. And places that are very luxuriant right now might become deserts. Deserts might become fertile areas. Hot places become cold places. Cold places become hot places. Yeah. The places that are on Earth now will get covered underwater. Yeah, I forget. They said, what was it, by was it 2100, or maybe it was 2050? Like, parts of Washington, D.C. are going to be underwater. So what do you do with all the monuments there? Yeah. What do you do with the Pentagon? Oh, I know what you do with the Pentagon. Let it be under the ocean. Yeah. The White House, Congress, I don't know about, maybe if Congress, if they were all floating, they would help each other, instead of backbiting so much. But, how much all of this could change over a period of time. Maybe even, in our lifetimes. We don't know, because they say that the climate change is really accelerating. Yeah? So what's that going to be like? And how's that going to affect economics and politics? A lot. Yeah? Okay. So just thinking, that this changeable nature of cyclic existence, it's so unstable. And yet we feel like we're kind of perfect, not perfect, permanent, and stable, and that the world is predictable. And when it's not predictable, we get really upset because it should be predictable. Yeah, unpredictable things should not happen. They're an anomaly. Anomaly. Yeah. And yet, why do we think like that? That's really a dumb way of thinking. Because if we just thought for a minute, of course, nothing is totally predictable. Nothing is fated or predestined. There's so many causes and conditions that are needed for something to happen that it all changes. And all we need to do is look at our own mind and watch our changing mind to know that nothing is stable or predictable. Yeah? When we first started the Abbey, some of the people living here, they, okay, we would meet in the morning, say what we're going to do that day, and then by lunchtime, everything would be different. And they would get so upset. And I never understood it, because also if you work in a job, it's the same way. Everything changes. But somehow here, things were supposed to be more predictable and change. And everything would change. Somebody would come, somebody would go, we'd get one phone call, the whole schedule changes, what we have to do, the weather changes, we have to do this today instead of tomorrow. Yeah. And just to look in the course of one day, and how unsettling unexpected change is for us. Yeah, it's really unsettling. Things that we never thought would happen to us happen. It's like, what? How is that happening? Okay, so this unpredictability of samsara, that's one meaning of the dukkha of change, that there's no stability anywhere. We're constantly aging. Every day we're closer to death. Every day we're, closer to whatever we're going to die from, whether it's a sickness or an accident or just old age, the body breaking down. Okay, that's happening every day. And then another meaning of the dukkha of change is that what we call happiness is actually pain in a mild form. Okay? So, an example we can know very well. When you sit for too long, like now, and when's she going to be quiet? Because I need to stretch my legs. They hurt. Or my back hurts. My, whatever it is that hurts. Yeah. And so then, bell rings. You get to stand up. Oh, that feels so good. Yeah. We call that happiness. Pleasure. But then, the longer we stand, what happens? Yeah, standing becomes painful. So was standing ever actually truly inherently pleasurable? Or was it when we first stood up that the pain of standing was very small? So when the pain of something is small, we call it pleasure. And as that pain gets bigger, then we call it pain. Yeah. Then when we sit down again, now sitting is pleasurable because the pain of sitting is now small and the pain of standing has gone away. But sitting is not going to bring us lasting pleasure because we'll soon get tired of sitting and we'll have to stand up. Okay? So if we look at all the things that we call pleasure, we can only call them pleasure if we have control over the amount of time we do them. If we don't have control over that, those things that we call pleasure become painful, which means that they were never truly pleasurable to start with. We just call pleasure on a small amount of pain. Okay? When you're hungry, yeah, I get to eat. You know, you dive into anything that's in front of you. And it's like, oh, pleasure. But what happens when you keep eating? Yeah. Then eating becomes painful, incredibly painful, doesn't it? Yeah. So what we call pleasure turns into pain. Yeah, so this is the dukkha of change. Not just that the external situation changes, and so our experience changes, but an activity, you know, that was pleasurable becomes painful because it was never truly pleasurable. Because if you think of anything we consider pleasurable, if you keep doing it, yeah, unless, you know, you have Dharma realizations, in which case it's, you know, you're not subject to this kind of unsatisfactory circumstance. But for everybody else, it's going to become painful after a while. Yeah. And so you see in our lives, yeah, we're always having to negotiate with the external environment and negotiate with the time we do something to try and minimize the pain we have and experience the pleasure we have. Because nothing is going to bring us lasting happiness in cyclic existence. Yeah. Our society bills relationships and sex as the highest pleasure. Yeah. Okay, so you fall in love with somebody and now you have to be with them 24/7. What's going to happen? Is that going to be pleasurable? Yeah. That person that you love so much, you're with them 24/7. Give me a break. Or you have to have sex 24/7. Exhausting. Again, just give me a break. Leave me alone. Yeah? Because what we call pleasure is basically pain when it's still small. Mm-hmm. So this is, okay, we were saying that the all living beings recognize the dukkha of pain as undesirable. Okay, not everybody recognizes the dukkha of suffering as undesirable or unsatisfactory. Okay, sorry, the dukkha of change. Not everybody finds that unsatisfactory. Yeah, because when we have what we want, we think it's going to last forever and it will bring us happiness forever. Yeah, so it's only actually spiritual practitioners, and this applies to spiritual really sincere, profound spiritual practitioners from almost every spiritual practice. They will recognize the dukkha of change as something unsatisfactory. Yeah, because that they aren't looking for those sense pleasure happinesses anymore, because they realize that they don't bring lasting happiness, and so then they turn their mind to whatever their spiritual tradition says is the goal, the ultimate state of bliss. Yeah. So, this applies pretty much, to most spiritual traditions, not to all of them, but people are seeking something beyond sense pleasure because they can see that all the sense pleasure things, in the end are unsatisfactory. Okay, so questions, comments?
When you were talking about human being becoming a cockroach,
Mm-hmm.
when you are in the bargain, how can the human mind become attracted to a cockroach?
Okay, so when you're in the bardo, after you've left your human body, how can your human mind be attracted to a cockroach body? First, in the bardo, you no longer have a human mind, because you're no longer a human being. You've died from being a human being. Okay? Yeah. So that consciousness, yeah, I don't know, maybe, what you look at there's some kind of karma where you like to be kind of sly and furtive and sneak around and get stuff without anybody knowing. You think that that's very appealing, and and maybe you zoned out a lot. Yeah.
I heard that, I don't know if you think it's a human beings having sex, but it's not, it's animal. But in your mind, in your consciousness, you see something else.
I've only heard that when they talk about having a human rebirth. You see the parents having sex, and you're attracted to one or the other. I haven't heard that in terms of animals. Perhaps it is like that. I don't know. Yeah. But in any case, the mind is somehow attracted to that kind of life. Yeah, whatever is going on in your mind, you're finding having that kind of body something desirable. You're drawn towards it in some way.
I have difficulty have that desire, you're attracted, and the karma.
Yeah.
Like having killing a lot of bees or whatever, or killing the flies. So that karma and that attraction.
Yeah. Well, the attraction isn't something logical and reasonable. It's a karmic appearance. Yeah. It's not something logical and it's just the appearance of something to your mind. Like when you're dreaming, you have lots of appearances, don't you? Even now we have lots of appearances, but we think the appearances are real. So the same thing in the bardo, you have appearances and you grasp them as objectively real circumstances. Yeah? So the mind is like, oh yeah, I want that. I was with a friend one time, and this friend loves dogs, and does so many nice things to take care of dogs, and which was really wonderful. But we were driving somewhere, and we passed a dog, and she said, "What a good-looking dog." And I thought, that kind of thought is what, could bring on, if you have that way of admiring an animal rebirth, then that kind of thought, could bring a karmic appearance at the time of death. Yeah. So there's a different, and I thought, so helping animals is definitely something virtuous, but admiring an animal body, attracts you to that. Okay? Okay, let's dedicate.